Shara Bland recently ran for city council here in Pasadena, and she's been sitting on the Commission on the Status of Women. I'll let her tell you how long. Shara, why don't you take it away?
Absolutely. Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Michelle, for putting on this candidate training. I'm excited to be a part of it, and certainly have just came off the campaign trail, believe it or not, Mark, 90 days ago? And certainly have learned a lot. As Susan, as you mentioned, and many know, and I just want to thank a lot of people who I see on Zoom right now. Really, your commitment and your encouragement along the campaign trail with me was just priceless. So I just want to just really thank you again for that. As Susan mentioned, I ran for City Council candidate District 4. And I ran against an incumbent who'd been there for now 3 terms. Learned a lot along the way. The reason that I had decided to run was I wanted to be a voice in my community and wanted to be heard at council. And so some of the things that I learned along the way was really, the foundation was with an organization called LAPI, which is the Los Angeles African American Women's Public Policy Institute, that I was a part of a number of years ago. And that kind of set the foundation for me. And then after that, last year in 2019, I was a graduate of Emerge. So those 2 entities contributed greatly to really building the foundation for me to run for office. Some of the things that I learned along the way in my campaign strategy was really building a really good campaign manager and strategist to really wrap my arms around what it would take to win, and really understanding the city of Pasadena and what the history of Pasadena and some of the things that were important. And I know in District 4, there's a lot of things that are happening in the plan. And that meant a lot to me and the constituents in our area that I wanted to be a voice for once again. I built a team of volunteers, and we went door to door many, many times. That was critically important. And of course, one of the lessons learned for me was the endorsement piece. One of the things that I can just honestly say, you can take all the classes you want, but when it comes to getting these endorsements, it's critical to understand the organizations that you want the endorsements from. So I spent many, many, many evenings really learning things that I just needed to know, just enough, right? To be able to, like an environmentalist and planning and things like that. Really just getting endorsements from the different entities and different unions and understanding what they wanted you to represent for them. So I built a foundation of really understanding what those endorsements were about. I sat as the chair on the Commission on the Status of Women, and as many of us know, and I want to just keep pushing forward, that survival guide is critically important to our community. There's a number of women's organizations, and just not only that, family organizations that we need to keep in front of us, especially now that things are unfolding. So I sat there with human trafficking and domestic violence and really just stood up for social justice. The other thing that I sat on is the nonprofit boards. I sat on several nonprofit boards. I sat on the Peace Over Violence. I sat on Los Angeles Cares Mentoring Movement. I sit on LA City College in the Guardian Scholars Program. You know, we have a lot of students that have aged out of the system, and we need to make sure that we protect them. So I sat on those as well. One of the things that I really want to mention is that along with this whole campaign strategy is that I went out and I met all of my constituents. And if you go to my website, one of the things that I really wanted to stand on was a front porch community. And the reason for that is really getting to know the people that we live with within our community. And what's happened to unfold after March 3rd election and going into the next week is that we all become a front porch community. Because now, under the COVID situation, it's like my whole idea has just come into fruition because now we're talking to our neighbors. We're making sure that they're okay. We're making sure that we're hearing what they need. So even though I did not win this seat, I can tell you that I got 20% of the votes, and that I'm sure Mark will fact check me on that. And that the wonderful part about that, that's about 2,000 people that believed in me. That's 1,995 people more than I knew before, but they know my name. And I can tell you at this point, I'm not going to be silent. I'm still very interested. I'm still really interested in the planning that's going on in our community. I'm really interested in the transportation that's going on in our community. I'm really interested in the environment that we lived in, particularly in District 4, where we know there's a lot going on. So with that, I want to just say thank you again for this. And I just want to note this. When you go to step out to run, the one thing people will say to you is you need money. And I can tell you that absolutely sure you do need money to run, but you really need a voice and you really need people to vote for you. And that is the number one thing. So don't let the money scare you and just step out and make it happen. And you'll have people like Susan and Michelle and Jackie and Diane and all the different people that you see here, Patrice, you know, my LaPi sister, my Emerge sister, and Tina with the Democratic Club, that just step in and support you and really encourage people to vote for you. So with that, Michelle, I think I'm at my 3 minutes, probably maybe a second over or so, but thank you.
Okay, Susan, you want to open it up for questions?
Okay, thank you, Char. So Tina Frederick's speakers, if you have thoughts on any of these questions as well, please, when it comes to your turn, chime in. Her first question, any suggestions in adjusting campaign strategies during COVID and 100% mail-in voting?
This is Jackie. Hi, Tina, and everyone else on the call today. So, first of all, I commend all of you for even considering to run for office. I know it's very daunting, and I've thought about all of the candidates that are out there right now as we're all adjusting to the COVID-19 situation and moving to all mail ballots, at least for LA County. And it might be different if you happen to not be in LA County, but even though we all mail and you can't necessarily door knock the way we're traditionally used to, I think this environment provides an excellent opportunity for you to reach every voter, because every voter is home more often than they're not home. And so for me, I see no reason why any of you or the candidates out there shouldn't be able to make at least one voice-to-voice contact, so to speak, to voters in your district. Again, because everybody's home, and you know, even if they're available only for a second, I guarantee they will remember that you call them, and even though you had to step away to go feed the kids or do something in your house, they're going to remember that they spoke to you and called you. And so I think you just have to be creative. I think a lot of campaigns are going to be moving to digital organizing via social media, but I would just caution that even with digital organizing, that's not going to win your campaign on its own, because everyone will be digital organizing. I can't count the amount of contribution emails that I've gotten, especially as different deadlines come near, and you know, sometimes it just kind of goes over your head and you skim it and move on. And so I think it's really important to be intentional about making those actual voice-to-voice or person-to-person voter contacts. And you can start that now, even as, you know, filing deadlines have not been completed. If you've already decided that you're running for a particular office, you can get started, get your voter file, and start dialing.
Yeah, and I'll just add, just in terms of the mail-in issue, you know, you just have to be mindful of the dates. Mark will probably go over some of that. You know when the ballots are going to be mailed out. You have to shift everything early, basically, much earlier, and that means fundraising, mailing, all of your strategy. Just shift earlier so that you've hit your voters by the time ballots reach their mailbox.
Which will be October.
One more. Let me ask one more of Tina's question because it came up at least one other time, and Shar, maybe you can address this, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. How do I manage job, husband, kids while running a campaign?
You know, that's a great question. And I can tell you, when I stepped out, I can just honestly say my husband was ready not to step out with me. And so, because for them, and I'm just being honest, because I think they just kind of test the water to see, is she really serious, right? And so as it began to unfold, and as he began to see the time invested and the money invested and the campaign really coming together and the people meeting and we're going out and all the things happening, he really got involved. And so, Tina, I know you've got a husband that's very supportive and you got 2 young girls, and you know what? Put them along with the campaign trail with you. I would suggest get them involved. They're a great voice and a representation for what you're doing. And I would just fold them into the committee. I would really bring them in. And I know sometimes people think the reverse of that, really just, let me just go forward and have somebody take care of home. But I think the value is really bringing everybody in as well. So, Susan, can I answer another question that came up as well regarding commissions? I just want to say that,
Sure.
if it's okay, is that
Yeah, go ahead.
right now with the new year starting July 1st for the city, reach out to your local council person, call him up, email him, and let them know directly that you are interested in a commission. And what I want to see is, I'm not sure how we can log this, but I want to see all the women's names that put their names out there to be a part of a commission, so that at the end of the day, we can kind of measure where that's at in the city, so that we can't come back and sometimes they'll come back, well, we didn't get a lot of people who asked, but we need to find a way to catalog people who are stepping up and asking to be a part of a commission. And Mark can probably speak to the very limited commissions that pay a very stipend amount of money. Thank you.
Shar, there was one last question by Teresa Bailey. She's asking, will you run again?
I can tell you that I've had a number of people ask me that. Even in my district, people are already behind me, and it's 4 years away. And I have such a hunger for this district and really wanting to be a voice that I'm highly considering that. So with people like the different folks that I see on this Zoom behind me, I'm sure that they'll be behind me, and we can win this. We can absolutely win this. We need women on the City Council of Pasadena. One is not enough.
Okay, I think we will move on to the next speaker. Mark, you unmuted yourself. Did you want to add anything about the vote by mail or dates or anything like that? Or
well, I will cover the vote by mail
commissioners?
and the dates in my presentation. I have a slide on that, and so there's some important dates in there. I was looking at I was trying to find, there might be a government code related to limits for stipends for commissions. I know that the Planning Commission receives a $50 stipend, and the City Council receives a stipend that was approved by a charter amendment. And so those are the 2 that I know of. There might be one other. So the stipend issue, I can do some more research and maybe get that out to Michelle, and she can distribute it out to the group after.
Yeah,
after
the school board receives a very minimal amount of a stipend
Right.
as
Right.
well.
So that was just, I just wanted to comment on
Thank
that
you.
because I was asked.
Okay, I will introduce our next speaker, who's Tammy Godley, who was on the school board, sat on the school board in South Pasadena, and then recently ran for city council here in Pasadena. And I'll ask you in advance to think about, maybe address one of the other questions that Tina posted, which is, how do you compete against incumbents or candidates who already have name recognition and money? I think you can probably speak to that.
I can indeed speak to that. So I ran for Pasadena City Council in District 6 against, as most of you probably, everyone knows, against Steve Masson, who had been in the position for 20 years. And over the course of that time, had endorsed a lot of people and had donated a lot of money to a lot of different things. So he was quite entrenched. I can't tell you the number of people who said, I'd love to endorse you, Tammy, but I can't because I owe Steve, or some version of that. We got 189 votes from pushing a runoff which I thought was good. It was particularly good because we moved from a municipal election to a state and national election, and that's an entirely different election, and that's where we are now. So the last time Steve ran in a contested election, there were 4,000 people who voted in District 6. I got about 3,100 votes, for about almost 40% of the vote. But if though about 3,000 of those people I talked to personally and got their commitment. In 2015, if there were 4,000 people, 3,000 votes of 4,000 would have been pretty good. But this year we had 9,000 people who voted in the election in District 6. So that's a different election. We had 10% of the people didn't vote for city council at all, which is much higher, 1% in 2015. It was, how you get the attention of people who are just there to vote for the presidential primary is tricky. And I think that's something that, you have to figure out. And I obviously wasn't able to figure out, but we got close. So I think the things that I did do that work, everyone talks about walking door to door. I don't know. I talked with Tina about this as a way that you could, with your mask, knock and walk way back and then talk to people if people weren't going to get too upset about that. But walking door to door, I did it for a year. I walked to every single house. I started a year ahead of time. I walked every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday during the week. And then I called over 6,000 people personally. So I talked personally to a lot of people, and I think that made a huge difference in getting people's attention. It also helped me really to refine the things that I was running for. The more you talk about it, the more you refine it, the more you can then speak about it at forums. So I think that's really critical. And I was surprised in terms of phone calling, 20% of the people answered their phones, because anyone who's registered to vote for a new time since we've had cell phones, they answer their cell phones. And if they hung up on me, then I immediately texted them. And then I would get text messages, they'd be like, oh, like you're a real person. Because a lot of times they just assumed I was, robocall, or that it wasn't really me. But once they knew it was me, they would engage with me. And sometimes they'd call me back and I'd text. So the phone was more fruitful. I honestly thought, my gosh, who answers their phone anymore? People actually did. I think I would ask for more help than I did from my friends, because I really did, all the walking, all the calling, and I needed to. Like, I shouldn't have had someone else doing that, but I should have had more people taking full responsibility for other things. I tried to be in control of too many things, and I would do that differently next time. I would give up control. I would say, you are doing house parties. Go do them. I will show up. I don't want to have anything to do with them. You go do it. And I didn't do enough of that. And I would have had surrogates walk after I walked. I was reluctant to do that because people were like, when you come to the door, they're like, and then, but once they knew it was me, they would open up and talk, and we'd have great conversations. But I think I still would have had, after I walk, I would recommend having surrogates. I found that younger women resonated more with not having enough women on the council. That really was something they got onto. For some reason, generationally, women over 50, that just didn't resonate with them at all. I mean, I actually had women say, I don't care about that. And I'd be like, okay. And I would never bring it up as a first thing, but at the end, I would just say, if you're one more thing, but that really only resonated for a younger generation. I think that, this is the long game. I'm definitely going to run again in 2024. I built a lot of goodwill. It's exciting to me. People are talking about the things that I talked about: police oversight, having a social worker front for some of these things, public education, all those things are really resonant right now. So it's exciting. I want to continue to be involved with those issues. And you just have to think about it a long game, especially running against someone who has been there for 20 years. That's just hard to beat, especially the first time out. And I have to say, it was super rewarding. I loved every minute of it. It's challenging. It's hard. I think the one other thing I would say is that, that women give less money than men as a rule. And that was frustrating at times. You'd ask a man and he would give you $500,000 just like that. And women just give less money. But I think, I think I came to understand there were reasons for that, and not to get discouraged by that. that and to realize that men have been trading on money and, over a longer period of time, and we just haven't done that as much. And so not to get discouraged, but just to be super grateful for whatever the things that people gave. It does cost a lot of money and it does take a lot of time, but it's super worth it to do. So definitely get out there and do it. So just some thoughts. I think I answered the question, Susan. I mean, you're going to have to spend money. You're going to have to walk to every door, and you're going to have to think of it as a long game. You may not beat them the first time out. So you have to be willing to play that.
Great, thanks. Let me ask one other question that you might address, and again, others might address when their turn comes, that Tina asked about. And that is what are the pros and cons of accepting donations from anyone or any group? So, for example, it's an issue. It's becoming an issue whether to accept money from the police union, for example, in Pasadena, if you're running for Pasadena City Council. Maybe accepting money from other unions that you might potentially negotiate with. So it certainly is an issue. Can be an issue on school board, for example. There may be other organizations or people. So I don't know if that's something that you grappled with or had to deal with. Or have any thoughts on?
I absolutely do. So I decided early on that I wasn't going to take any money from municipal unions. And let me be candid, I wasn't going to get any money from the police union. So that was not a particularly hard decision for me to make. But I also think it's the right one. I mean, we're hearing a lot about it now, how the police union has outsized impact because of their contributions. And they put tens of thousands of dollars in the campaign for Steve. So I think that's a good decision to make. But there are other people that are going to ask you that you may decide. So I met with the apartment owners. What my strategy was, I would meet with everyone because I wanted to hear what they had to say, but I would tell them up at some point in the interview, I can't take your any money or your endorsement, and here's why, or whatever, but I would meet with everyone. Like, there are some people who wouldn't meet with certain groups, but I wanted to hear from the apartment owners. I wanted to hear what, here are my thoughts about evictions and how we can address homelessness. What do you think? So that was the strategy I took. Like, I would tell them, I'm not going to be taking any money, but I really want to hear from you and I really want to meet with you. And actually, I thought that worked really well for me.
Great. Okay, thank you. I think we'll move on to, thank you very much, Tammy. Really helpful. Our next speaker is Sandra Chen Lau, who unseated an incumbent, actually, so she can perhaps speak to that question, and currently sits on the Board of Trustees for Pasadena Community College. So, Sandra.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. Like Susan said, I did unseat an incumbent in 2018, and it was a tough race in some ways, and in some ways it wasn't. Certainly, the messaging was really important because there were some real issues that were happening at Pasadena City College, and one of them was that in 2015, Pasadena City College was put on academic probation. How many of you knew that PCC was actually on probation, right? So it was important to get the messaging when running against an incumbent as to why that incumbent needs to go and why you are the one to place the incumbent. Certainly, sometimes it's not enough just to say, well, I'm a good candidate, and I have great passion for education. It's important to filter down to the message as to why you and why now. And that was important for me to articulate and to convey. And certainly when running against an incumbent, I would say money is important. I remember someone said, think of how much you need to raise and cut that by half, because that's what you're actually going to raise, because people would say that they're going to give you some money and then you go to them and it's like, well, I can't right now, or I can only give you half. But I was really fortunate because PCC's rates do not have a limit in how much someone can give. So my top donor was actually a woman who gave me $5,000 for that race. So I was really happy to be supported by women and women donors. And I know that for women candidates, one of the biggest challenges is to raise money. So I raised over $100,000 for that race. And typically for a community college race, it's about 18,000 to 40,000. So I knew I had to do double and to raise double that to beat an incumbent. And it was hard, you know. I remember sitting down and when I was at the $40,000 mark and going, well, how am I going to get the rest of this? You know, when you have a consultant that tells you you need another 30 grand to get 5 more mailers out, or you know, and so it was certainly a challenge to raise up money. But I found that, you know, once you start calling, you know, people do support you. And, you know, when someone says no, I'm very gracious and I just move on, you know, because it's about the number of calls you're going to need to make to be dialing for dollars. So I don't take the no personally. I know it's hard because as women, many of us want to be liked. And when someone says no to you, you feel like that's such a rejection. But I remember my husband, who was very supportive, he told me that you just need to move on and you need to keep going. And he told me that my 2 jobs was to raise money and to have donor contact. So those were the 2 things that I did, and that's all I did. So I would, on weekdays and on weekends, I would go into a corner of the house, because I do have 2 kids, 5 and 10, and I would dial. And I have on some answering machines, my son screaming for me, mommy, you know. So I do understand how difficult it is to juggle all of that. That's why I think it's very important to have a partner who understands what you're going to need to go through. So my husband took the kids on for, I would say, almost 10 weekends, you know, so that I can walk and I can make my calls. In terms of the campaign strategy, I did hire a consultant. I think how you put together the team is very important. I knew that I was a new candidate, may not be known to some of the establishment in the community. So I made sure that I hired a consultant who worked on local races and who was well known and well respected, so that he can also help to be my champion and make the network and connections. There is a price for that, but I thought that was well worth the money to spend on. Because I'm also a working mom, I knew that I was not going to be able to knock on every door. So I did hire a campaign manager who helped me organize, you know, the house parties and the walks. So the PCC faculty and students supported me. So many of them walked for me, and I walked too, but there were just multiple folks that were out there that were walking. And I always also remember that, you know, even though the PCC race, and I know some of the local races are considered nonpartisan, to me, it was benefit to run as a Democrat because I am a proud Democrat and my opponent was a Republican. So campaign strategy wise, it was important to lay out the differences between myself and my opponent. So the Democratic clubs also helped support my campaign, and they also volunteered and called. And I know Tina did some calls, you know, Susan, you know, many of you who are on this call, you know, were Joanne, you know, you were all very much part of the campaign. And so that was also a strategic move to lay out the difference between my opponent and myself. And because when you're running against the incumbent, again, it comes down to why he or she needs to go and why are you the better fit for the position. And when I talk to supporters, especially in the earlier rounds of getting endorsements, the question that I answered was, what is my path to victory? How was I going to win this campaign? Truth be told, people want to back winners, right? They are, when you're asking for endorsements or when you're asking for donations, you know, they want to know that you can win. And, you know, when I told my daughter, oh, I think I can win this race, she is at 8 years old at that time, said, no, mommy, you have to say you will win this race, not that you just can win this race. So she's a competitive gymnast. So that sat with me. And so when I started talking to people, it was how I will win this race. What was my path to victory? How much money was I gonna, you know, raise? Who are my endorsers? You know, and so that's laid out the groundwork so that people felt confident that I can win and that I will win. And even if I were to lose, they knew that I had a plan and I would have put all that I could, you know, into the race. So there is a level of trust that you have to have with yourself, knowing that, you know, there's a strategy side, there's a messaging side, and there's also being authentic. A lot of times women candidates, we get told that we need to be this or that and this, you know, and for me, I needed to be myself. Certainly, you know, I didn't come from the establishment, but I felt that it was important that I came off very genuine and sincere and authentic so that it connected with people. It helped that I have 2 kids and I was running for an education board. You know, I had a stake in the game. I'm a mom. Certainly, I do think that I came out of a district that is very diverse in terms of politics. PCC goes from La Cañada all the way to El Monte. My district is La Cañada, West Pasadena, and Altadena. So the politics are different. It was very helpful to look at your numbers game, number of registered voters, who are the ones that vote for these local elections, and they're the ones that I called. I called about 7,500 households. We knocked on 2,300 doors. You know, many people say that, you know, sometimes it's whether people like a candidate or not. But for me, it was important that we get our numbers down. And so I do think that for women, and certainly for me as an Asian American woman, it was important that I bring my background as an advantage, as a leverage, you know, to the race. And I do think that people were very, it resonated with them. So to the question of being, you know, a working mom and how you prioritize, I tell some of the ladies who are running now that there is no good time, right? There's never a good time. So you need to make a decision and do it. And to me, I felt that you can always talk yourself out of doing things that you may be afraid of or that's unknown. And I'm here to say that I did it, and you can do it too. And it's not going to be easy, and it's all you in many ways. And I think that's going to be the scary part. You know, before I finish, I want to just conclude with this saying that there's no better way to find out who your real friends are than running a campaign. Okay, you will be disappointed, and you will be hurt. At the same time, when you win that race, it will be worth it. And even if you come up short, you know that you have tried it and you got in the ring and you fought the fight. So I want to be as encouraging as I can, you know, from a working mom, to say that the time is now. And I'm so proud of all of you who are here, you know, thinking about running for office, and some of you who are actually going to do it. So thank you very much.
Great. Thanks so much, Sandra. I don't see any new questions in the chat. So if I've missed anything, just know that there will be an opportunity at the end to ask questions as well. So I think we'll move on. Our next speaker is Diane Filabosian, who's been involved in local politics here in Pasadena for many years, also ran for Board of Trustees, PCC Board of Trustees, and has been on commissions at lots of different levels here in California. So Diane, take it away.
Thank you. And I first want to congratulate Sandra for having the courage to get out there and to beat an incumbent who really was doing a terrible job and service in our community. And I'm glad that I could help pave the way a little bit for that to happen. I'm going to talk about both commissions and candidacy. I've served at all levels of state, municipal, and county commissions. State of California as a gubernatorial appointee, to a child care policy advisory committee. I currently serve as Catherine Barger's appointee to the LA County Child Care Planning Committee, and just finished in January 6.5 years on the Pasadena Center Operating Company Board, and have chaired all of those commissions at one point in time. So let me first give just a quick little 101 on how to be a commissioner. First of all, you want to develop your resume so that you have a background for the positions for which you're seeking. Review the city websites. Where are those commission listings? What are those commissions? And Mark will tell us more about that. Find your start attending commission meetings. Become familiar with the issues in those commissions. Participate during the public comment with your constructive comments and ideas. Look for where you can be truly useful, and then watch for openings on the commission. These all have terms that expire. Submit your application well in advance of an anticipated opening, and as someone said earlier, let your city council member, your mayor know of your interest in the commission so they can get to know you and your commitment to the issues. Once appointed, be an active and contributing member to really build your resume. Attend functions in addition to the commission meetings that are related to the department to which the commissioners are invited, and be an ambassador to the community you're representing on the commission, and seek the input of your community. I can't emphasize that strongly enough, that it's all about community coalition building. In the 1 minute I have left, I want to talk very quickly about being a candidate, because I did run for Pasadena City College trustee, and it was a fast campaign. From the date that I was asked to run to the election, we had 3 months. And in those 3 months, we accomplished a significant amount and fell only 150 votes short of winning that election. If we had had 1 week more, we could have won. But seek an elected office for which you have a passion. Don't just seek election to hold office. Be clear about why you want to serve and how you can help move the community forward. Talk with your potential constituency to explore candidacy and start early. Don't wait for those last 3 months. Plan your campaign strategy. What are those 3 to 5 major issues that will frame what you represent, what you will bring as an elected official to the position, and run an upbeat campaign? Because it's not about the other person, it's about you. Demonstrate you're a team player, a problem solver. Create a strong community coalition and make it about your strengths, not about the negatives of your opposing candidates. And use your candidacy as a public forum for highlighting the benefits of the organization. For PCC, it was an easy slam dunk because I could talk about my passion, which is higher education, and the importance of the whole system of education in California and the benefit to the whole community of each segment, linking early childhood all the way to career and beyond, and the critical nexus that community colleges play in that. Raise funds, it's been said already. You want to raise funds to hire staff and recruit, organize, and engage a group of highly motivated volunteers. They are the lifeblood of the campaign. They spread the story of what you stand for. Keep them engaged and keep appreciating them. Then at the end, regardless of the outcome, have an upbeat message at the end and make a statement of what your campaign and what your candidacy accomplished. Sorry, I went over a minute and a half.
No, thank you so much, Diane. That's fantastic. Again, you guys are covering everything so beautifully. I don't see any new questions. Again, there will be time at the end and we'll open it up for general questions at that time. So we'll move on to Jackie Robinson Baisley, who, as all of you probably know, was on the City Council here for 3 terms. Is that right?
I mean, yes, 3 terms.
3 terms.
2 terms.
2
Almost
terms.
3.
Okay. And then ran for mayor, gave up her seat to run for mayor, and again has been involved in local politics here for many, many years as president of our local chapter of NWPC. So, Jackie.
Okay. So I'm going to try not to be repetitive, but I think all of our speakers this evening had excellent advice, and it just brought back so many memories for me. I'm only basically 1 term removed from being in elected office, but I must say I do miss it. I miss being engaged on the policy level, direct policy level with the community, but of course through appointments and, you know, volunteerism in the community, I just want to say that that is the experience in and of itself. And so, you know, everybody can't be an elected official. Even the elected officials need, you know, supporters and people on the outside to help agitate and encourage your colleagues on whatever board you're sitting on to, you know, pass the policies that you're going to be supporting. So by all means, you know, if you're not planning to run for office yourself, you can always help contribute to a candidate, be appointed, go and speak in support or in opposition to policy at the various meetings. And so there's a multitude of ways you can be involved in civic engagement in your respective cities. So most recently, I volunteered to help Shar with her city council campaign. And so I guess my first piece of advice would be, and this is something that I asked her as well, one of the things that I always ask candidates that ask me about running for office is, as a baseline, if everybody that promises you the world, because everyone will promise you the world before you run for office, they'll promise to raise you money, knock on doors for you, help you. If everybody that promised you something, nobody does anything, do you still want to run, as a baseline question? Because again, people will promise you the world, especially if they think you're in the winner's circle already without doing any work. So I just use that as my baseline question, both for myself and for people that I'm helping. Do you still want to run if nobody does anything? Secondly, like Sandra mentioned earlier, I think you need to know that if you decide to run, know that you will win. I think it's too much time, money, and resources, both of yourself and of the people that are supporting you, if you're running just for the sake of getting your name out there, or just to get out there, get your name recognition up, and you'll run the next time. Like, no, this is the time you're running, and this is the time that you know you will win. So if you don't think you can win, I would suggest you not run. And that has nothing to do with money or your team or anything. It's just, you know, your own self-reflection. I would also suggest that if you are able, hire help. I think one of the things about campaigns, and I decided to run in a very short time period. I decided to run for city council my first time. I was basically in the beginning of my career. I was only 27 years old. I was away in another state working on a campaign. and everything literally came together in one weekend. I think Susan was one of the women that I ended up calling that weekend to ask, you know, to see if I was crazy or not. But you know, the three women that I spoke to that weekend encouraged me to move forward, and everything very much happened within a couple of weeks of the filing deadline. And I can't say that I would have made that decision had I not already worked on campaigns myself and kind of knew what I was getting into. But I think that leads me into my next piece of advice, which is that your job is to be the candidate once you decide to run. Your job is to fundraise, speak to voters, and seek endorsements. Nothing else. You shouldn't be, you know, trying to get out of call time and putting together lawn signs or doing other random things that doesn't involve reaching voters. And so, again, if you have the ability, please do hire help. I had help on my very first campaign. None of them were paid. It was all volunteer. My friends and family that basically donated their time, had worked on prior campaigns. And so in some respect, we knew what we were doing, but no one was paid, but I still had the help. And I think that helped me tremendously the very first time I ran. I would also say know why you're running and what you stand for. I know there was an earlier question about considering taking money from, you know, police union and different other entities. And I wanted to chime in at that point and say, you know, I think that goes back to the reason why you're running and what you stand for. And that will help not only craft your campaign messaging, but also to help you decide what endorsements you want to seek out. And if you stand for the same things of the endorsers, whether they're unions or environmental organizations or other, you know, LGBTQ advocacy organizations, to help facilitate what endorsements you're going to go out for. Because, you know, I will say as a candidate that, you know, if you're not self-funded, it can be very enticing to just, you know, willy-nilly change your position on things and decide that you're going to support X because they're going to give you, you know, Y amount of money. And I don't think that's a good position to be in, because eventually they will come up before your governing body and you'll have to make some decisions. And that's not to say that money automatically translates to a yes vote in any instance. And that's one of the reasons why, in the scope of all the conversations that are going on right now about police candidates taking or not taking police union money, I think that's a very slippery slope. And I was supported by not just the police union in Pasadena, but nearly all of the other employee bargaining groups too. But I think in the larger context, if you decide not to take money from a certain bargaining unit, what does that say about the ability of other entities to have their voice heard during the policy-making process? Even inclusive of just the general public, because we can see oftentimes in Pasadena, you know, the more marginalized parts of our community, they don't have an opportunity to just gather together, gather some money and develop a fund to be able to sue the city because they don't want XYZ occurring. And I view that as the same thing. If you're financially well off enough to be able to do that. And I think you have to discuss all of that in terms, and I just think there's a larger context of campaign finance reform that needs to be had, not just in Pasadena, but I think on the state and federal level. So I'm getting sidetracked, but that's what I have to say about knowing why you're running and what you're running for, because it's going to help develop your strategy for endorsements in your campaign. And lastly, to the best of your ability, I would advise that you stick to the issues and not attacks. I have been involved in many, many campaigns, some large, some small, and when campaign attacks get personal, I think it's very hurtful. It does nothing to help. It does nothing to, many of you guys can hear my daughter in the background. I think it does nothing to help establish your candidacy as a serious candidate if you have to resort to, you know, name calling and other things that have nothing to do with the campaign. Of course, like anything else, there's a double standard that exists for women in terms of your experience and how you present yourself on the campaign trail. So again, I just think to the extent possible, if you can avoid negative campaigning, then do that. And I think that's it for now. Let me introduce Sora, for those of you that don't know her.
Hi,
And
Sora, long time no see.
my new life post being in elected office. She is 2 years old, and she is what is occupying my time right now, but it gives me even more incentive to encourage myself to run for office again, and I will. I don't know when or where or what position, but she is my motivation now to help make Pasadena and our state a better place.
So
That's great.
Jackie, we thank you. That was great. Great information. There is a question from Elise Calfayan. I hope I pronounced her last name correctly. She's asking, lack of compensation for citizen commission work shuts out many individuals representing disadvantaged populations that might otherwise be motivated to get involved and that have valuable perspectives. What are the arguments for keeping these posts unpaid? Can you answer that or speak to it?
Well, I think one part is city budgets, of course. I think secondly, it's, you know, abuse by the limited few cities and sitting elected officials that have abused the system and their case becomes more widely known. That casts a shadow over the people that really are doing it for the love of the service and for it to better their community. I do agree that there's a reason why you see older white males and more established, more people that are more established or retired that are run for office, because it is a big balancing act. And me, even as I was the youngest person on the council, I was single. This was before I had a husband and a baby. Like, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And those are all things that you have to balance. And, you know, I think sometimes, and unfortunately, I think sometimes women were the most critical, can be the most critical sometimes. I mean, I had, even after serving 2 terms on the city council, there were a few women that, you know, asked me about, you know, having a husband and whether I wanted to raise kids, as if I couldn't do all of it concurrently. And so I think it's just a change in mindset of people, both men and women, and also letting people know that, you know, your personal experience coming as you are is enough. I mean, I had people saying that I was, you know, still too young after after 2 terms on the council, still didn't have enough experience. And you just have to ignore the naysayers and go with your gut, know that you're going to work even harder once you win to prove them wrong, so to speak. And again, I think there needs to be a wholesale conversation about policy changes in Pasadena and elsewhere about campaign finance contributions, compensation, term limits, and other things that factor into the reasons why or why not people choose not to run.
Thank you, Jackie. Let me just add one thing relevant to Jackie's campaign. When Jackie first ran, she was one of, I think, 7 or 8 candidates who ran in the primary. So, you know, she had to believe that she was going to win. Part of the strategy around that, obviously, is first step, make it to the runoff, right? Don't even think about winning, really. Make it to the runoff. You know, you have to be in the top 2.
She only didn't make it to the runoff by 189 votes, which is very little compared to how many people voted. I made it to the runoff. There was only 5 vote difference between myself and Robin Salzer. So, especially in the local, literally every single vote counts.
Yeah, exactly. So don't let, you know, I guess the lesson is don't let, you know, a field of 7 or 8 people daunt you necessarily. You just sort of have to, you know, stay in your lane, keep focused, and remember all of the things that, all the reasons that you're doing this. Okay, so that's it for the women who have run and or held office. Again, there will be time at the end for additional questions if there are any. But we're very pleased to have Mark Jomsky here with us, who is the city clerk here in Pasadena. He's going to share with us, I think, some of the nuts and bolts of how to file, how to pull papers, how to file, dates, all that kind of thing. I know I believe he has a PowerPoint presentation, so I will turn it over to Mark and Michelle.
Can I just
Thank you
add
for
one
being
more
here.
thing? I'm sorry, Mark. Can I just add one more thing before
Sure.
we get I just wanted to add that as an incumbent and as a city council member, I had a challenger both times that I ran for re-election, and I don't know if that was, planned by some outside entity or what, because I think I was doing an excellent job. But I would just say, no sitting elected official is entitled to their position. I think it's perfectly fine to challenge someone to make them defend their record. And keep them on their toes, essentially. And so I would say if you're challenging an incumbent, good for you. You have to do the same amount of work, whether you're challenging an incumbent or not. And lastly, as Mark speaks, I would say be nice to your be nice to your officials that are running these elections, because they are under a lot of pressure. And 9 times out of 10, you will be working with that same person once you're elected. And Mark is an excellent city clerk. I really enjoyed my time working with him from the city.
Thank you, Jackie.
And
I always enjoyed working with you, and it's always great to be in the position of the city clerk, because you get to meet everybody as they go through the process, and you're really the first person to get to know the candidates as they become candidates and they go through the process. I actually don't get to see any of the campaign side of it. I'm so concentrated on the election side of it and coordinating the city's election process that listening to all of you give your views on running for office is really informative to me, because I don't really see that side of it. So it's really great to hear and to get that perspective. I'm really excited to be here. I actually changed venues. I was going to try and do this from my house, but I got called into the office. I was telling Michelle that I was a little worried that my 3 daughters were going to make a lot of noise. And by the way, Jackie, your concentration during that point, I don't know that I could do it. It's incredible. But I have 3 daughters, so this is really great for me to be here to as a father of daughters. I like the hashtag girl dad. It's great to see this kind of a gathering, and I fully support everything that you all are doing. So Michelle's going to put up a PowerPoint for me. But in the meantime, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Mark Jomsky. I'm the city clerk for Pasadena. I've been working for the city of Pasadena since 2005. I've been the city clerk since 2008, when I took over for Jane Rodriguez, who was a great mentor of mine. I've been working on elections both with Pasadena and with the city of Calabasas since 2003. So I've run elections in 2003, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17. And there were some runoffs in there, or most runoffs after 2009. So I've been through a lot of different races, some very close. In 2017, there was an election in District 7 where the difference was 15 votes between the 2 top vote getters that went to a runoff, and then it flipped in the general election. But what we'll do is go through sort of what I'm going to provide to you is the candidate orientation presentation that I usually do for candidates at the beginning of the nomination period. And next week is the opening of the nomination period for PUSD districts 2, 4, and 6. So if anybody's here today thinking about running for PUSD district, and you live in districts 2, 4, and 6 as a Board of Education member, then this will be repetitive next week, a little bit of it. I've condensed it down a little bit to fit within the time allotted. And this is, and I'm giving it to you from the perspective of running for local office, meaning city council and Board of Education, because those are the races that I am involved in. And then I'll provide a few details about what's coming for the November general election. So let's get started with the next slide. So there are various elections officials at different levels of government for California. We have the Secretary of State who works with the legislature to set the rules for elections that govern all the elections that take place in California. We have the Registrar Recorder County Clerk who oversees elections in the County of Los Angeles, and that's for county elections as well as that office runs the state and federal elections all the way down to the local elections in school and city elections. The city clerk is the elections official for Pasadena. I'm also the assistant secretary of the Board of Education. It's a title given to me through the city charter, so I help the PUSD run their elections. Previous to 2020, the last time we had an election in 2017, my office ran the election from start to finish, from the nomination period all the way to the counting of ballots and certifying the election process and everything in between, selecting poll workers, polling locations, getting out vote by mail, doing the signature verification on return ballots, things of that nature. So we did everything from start to finish, but because of Measure AA and BB, we've switched our election timing to coincide with the statewide election dates. And some in our office bemoan it, but I want to say that I think it's been really incredible in terms of turnout. We had, I believe, and I didn't write the number down, but I believe we had over a 60% turnout in elections in Pasadena, whereas when we were on the March and April election cycle in odd years, we could get election turnout in the low, in the single digits to the highest I saw in certain district races was in 30% turnout rates. So we're talking a large swath of Pasadena voters participating in our local races. So what we're involved with now is we oversee the nomination process. We receive all the election filings from candidates. We proof the printing of the election materials for candidates. And if there's a ballot measure, then for the government, we do the proofing for the ballot measure to be on the ballot. And then we pass it over to the Registrar Recorder County Clerk, who will handle all the other aspects of the election, the printing of election materials, coordinating the vote by mail balloting, overseeing in-person voting, and counting of ballots. Next slide. So we had the March 3rd, 2020 primary election for the city of Pasadena, which was for the office of mayor and for city council's districts 1, 2, 4, and 6. Districts 1, 2, 4, and 6 were decided in the primary. A candidate in each of those races received a 50% plus one majority, which declared them the winner. In the office of the mayor, there were 4 candidates. If I'm not counting incorrectly, there was 4 candidates, and 2 went into the runoff. No one received a 50% plus one majority, so 2 candidates are now in the runoff for the general election. So for November 3rd, we'll have the mayoral election, and we'll have the Pasadena Unified School District Board of Education elections for the geographic subdistricts 2, 4, and 6. Next slide. So some important dates to know about the general election, and when I go through these presentations, we'll make it specific to whatever election and whatever timing it is, but these are the important dates, and so they happen for each election. There's a nomination period where we issue nomination papers to candidates who want to run for office, and that starts on Monday the 13th and goes until the 88th day before the election, which is Friday, August 7th. During that time, the candidates will gather signatures on petitions that we issue to the candidates. They will go out and gather those signatures. Even with COVID-19, the Secretary of State has not suspended the rules related to that. So candidates will actually have to go in person and gather in-person signatures for the nomination papers. And then and turn those documents in. There's and we'll go through some of the documents that need to be turned in as part of the nomination process. But that's the period that they'll go out and gather signatures and get everything ready to be turned in to become an official candidate on the ballot. If an incumbent does not file, an eligible incumbent does not file, then the nomination period gets extended by 5 days. So that could happen for the Board of Education. I may have heard something related to one of the board members not seeking re-election. So in that case, there will be an extra 5 days for that nomination period. One of the things, and it's a little out of order, but it happens during the nomination process, is 90 days out from the election, August 5th in this case for the November 3rd election. There are reporting periods for campaign finance, and I'll talk a little bit about campaign finance when we get to that part of the presentation. But right off the bat, part of running for office is you're going to need to report out and keep track of campaign contributions that you receive and campaign expenditures that you're making. And if you receive contributions of $1,000 or more, you have an obligation to report that out through a form to my office for us to post up for the public to see within 24 hours of receipt of that. And so that starts right off the bat. So it's really important that when we're going through these, when we go through our candidate orientation process, that you check out the dates and make sure that you're aware of them. The order of the ballots as their name appears on it is done by a random alphabet drawing, and that occurs the day after the extended nomination period is closed. So that's August 13th. Let's go to the next slide. These are some of the questions you had asked earlier, wanted me to touch on the next slide. There we go. So the mailing of sample ballot pamphlets will go out on September 24th, 2020. The mailing of vote by mail ballots will go out, they're scheduled to go out in the mail on October 5th. So you have to figure that the pamphlets and the ballots will take about a week for them, 3 to 5 days, maybe a week, for them to start to drop in mailboxes. And the county is responsible for putting those out by those dates. There is a voter registration deadline of October 19th, sorry. I will talk a little bit about that because the vote centers open on October 24th, and if you haven't registered to vote by October 19th, you can still go in and register to vote at a vote center and be a conditional voter. There's a process for voters who are not registered to vote to go in person to these vote centers, register to vote, and cast a ballot that same day. So if you ever find anybody who hasn't registered to vote yet and they missed the October 19th deadline, they can always go into the vote centers and register to vote. So the one thing I would note about the October 19th deadline is that the county is required now. The Board of Supervisors passed a order directing the Registrar Recorder County Clerk to mail out a vote-by-mail ballot to every voter in Los Angeles County, every registered voter. So in order for you to get your vote-by-mail ballot sent to you, you have to be a registered voter by the 19th. So that is one aspect of it. So that's kind of important if somebody's worried about COVID, that they want to get their vote-by-mail ballot in the mail, they should make sure that they get registered to vote by the 19th. I did add in here something that's not election related, but I still am going to plug it for 2 seconds and just say the 2020 census deadline is the last day to be counted is October 31st. And so if any of you are out there and have friends or family or neighbors who have not yet completed their census, we are falling behind in our census count for Pasadena and self-responding. So I wanted to just at least use every opportunity I have to plug census. We have census information available on the website. If you have any questions about census, please send me an email and I'll be happy to send you information. And then of course, another important date is election night. That's when the tally of votes occur in Norwalk. There will be in-person voting. I know that it's been said already that vote by mail ballots will be sent out to every voter, but there still will be in-person voting. So the vote centers will still open on October 24th, and ballot counting will occur on November 3rd, and it will be first all the vote by mail ballots that they received ahead of time and that they could prepare for voting, and then the vote center ballots as well will get counted. So that's what will get counted on election night. Everything else that they receive, all the vote by mail ballots that they receive at the polls or in the mail up to the Friday, which, what is that, November 7th? Up to that Friday will still be counted as long as it's postmarked and received by the county. Those ballots will be counted by November 7th. So all of the extra counting that takes place over the weeks and weeks after the election is all the ballots they weren't able to count on election night. Let's go to the next slide. So to become a candidate for your name on the ballot, first of all, you need to be eligible. A candidate must be a registered voter and reside within the voting area for the local office sought. So if you're running for mayor, you need to live in and be registered in the city of Pasadena. For council member, live in and be registered for the council district. And for Board of Education, live in and be registered in the geographic sub-district. So that's right off the bat your first requirement. If you're not registered to vote, you can register prior to pulling papers. I'm authorized by the elections code for you to come in and say, I'm not registered at my current location, but I would like to register, and they can turn in their voter registration form with me, and I can issue them papers. So that can happen on the day that I issue the paper. But you have to be registered to vote. And then what you're required to do is you're required to go out and get the qualified signatures of registered voters that likewise reside in the same specific voting area as the nominee. So city for the mayor, council district for the council member, geographic sub-district for the Board of Education. Registered to vote and live within that area for us to count. And then their signatures match, and we check to make sure that their signatures match what's on file with the county. The signatures needed to run for office for the office of mayor is 50 valid signatures. For council and Board of Education, it's now 25 valid signatures. Next slide. So when you circulate your nomination petition, candidates may circulate their own nomination papers, or you can appoint circulators. These are some of those things that the candidates who talked about running for office, they talked about delegating out some of the jobs. You are able to delegate out the circulation of nomination papers. The one thing that you want to make sure you do is give one paper to one circulator. You cannot transfer a nomination paper from one circulator to another for them to complete. It has to be one circulator per petition. The circulator must be 18 years of age, and then there are no other requirements. They don't need to be a registered voter. They don't need to live in the district or the area. They don't need to be even a citizen. They can be non-citizens. Everyone who is 18 years of age can be a circulator. A circulator completes the back of the declaration on the back of the nomination paper in his or her own handwriting. And that's important. You can't type that in for them. They have to be able to complete the declaration in the circulator in their own handwriting. Let's go to the next slide. So what I always tell everybody, and it always happens, get extra signatures. On the papers that we provide to you, there's space for 35 signature places for the city council districts and for the Board of Education districts. We give the mayor's races, I think, a paper that has slots for 75 spaces for signatures. So we always tell everybody, get extra, because people will say they live in a district and they don't. People will say they're registered to vote and they might be registered in another area previously. They may be registered, but they're not registered where they need to be. And it is at the time that the papers are being checked that counts. So when we go in to look at it, if the person's not in the district, registered to vote, and their signature matches, then that signature won't match, and we can't count it. You want to file your nomination petition early. The deadline is for this upcoming November election is August 7th. But if you file it early, it gives us a chance to check it. If we see that you are missing signatures, we are allowed to issue you one supplemental petition to correct the insufficient signatures if you have any. So it provides the candidates with the opportunity to correct any deficiencies. The voters are allowed to sign only one nomination petition for the same office. So if candidate A and candidate B are running for the same seat, and candidate A turns in their petition and they have a voter in common, then the voter on the first petition is the one that counted. The second is the one we say, sorry, it's already been counted on somebody else's paper. And then supplemental petitions, like I said, can be issued, and the voters must, and this is important because this happened in a recent election, the voters must sign, print their name, and enter their address. There are no ditto marks. There can't be any blanks. You can't say same as above. The person has to put in they have to sign their name and print their name and enter their address. Otherwise, that signature cannot be counted. Let's go to the next slide. And then on the back, when you come to turn in your papers with me, we'll have you complete the affidavit of nominee. We'll make sure that the declaration of circulator is completely filled out. We'll administer the oath that says that it's you who is running, that you accept the nomination, and that you will accept the elected office. That you give us the name as your name you want it to appear on the ballot, and you're going to give us your ballot designation. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And you complete that in the presence of the city clerk, because we'll administer an oath for you, and you'll pay your $25 filing fee. Next slide. So what is a ballot designation? I just talked about that. So on the name, it's the word, on the ballot, it's the words that appear under the name of the candidate, and it's the principal profession, vocation, or occupation. And there are specific rules to what you can use for your ballot designation. And if anybody's interested in going to it, you can look up California election codes, and those are the code sections that pertain to it. There are different rules for the type of candidate that you are. If you're an elected official running for the same or different office, there's rules that apply to you. If you're a non-elected candidate, then there are rules that apply to you. And if you're an appointed official running for office, then there are rules that apply to you. Let's go to the next slide. So for the elected officials, these are the candidates that are holding an elected office. They are allowed to use the title of the elected office at the time of the filing of the nomination papers, and it's not limited to 3 words. So it could be the member of the city council, it could be PUSD Board of Education member, it could be Pasadena Unified School District Board of Education member, District 2. So it could be the title of their office. An elected office holder can use the word incumbent, but only the word incumbent. So that's a choice for that person. But you have to be a candidate for the same elected office when you use incumbent. And then another choice is an elected official may opt to include his or her profession along with the words designating the elected office, but it is limited to 3 words when you use a profession. So board member / teacher, that could be a valid ballot designation for a board member who serves as a teacher as well. Next slide. So for the non-office holders, that's candidates not holding an elected office. I'll go through this quickly. We do go through this again with candidates as they run for office, but it's no more than 3 words describing your current principal, profession, vocation, or occupation. If you're not currently employed, it's okay to use the principal occupation during the preceding calendar year. So January 1, 2019 to December 31, 2019. You want to ask yourself, what is my primary job or profession? They're going to ask you to be accurate in your description of your profession. And then when you're describing your profession, you can use, you can say what you're doing, but you cannot use specific names. So organizational company names must be replaced with generic references. So President Computer Company, that's fine. President Apple Computers, not acceptable. You can also not use words such as that would evaluate you as a candidate, prominent, leading, advocate, activist, professional. Those are descriptive words, and they're not allowed pursuant to the elections code as part of your ballot designation. You will give more than one choice. We want you to give 3 choices, and there's a whole worksheet that is required to be completed when you're doing your ballot designation. You don't have to do a ballot designation, but most everyone does. And the next slide, just quickly, this has happened actually more than once in the last few years. For those that are appointed to office, so to fill an unscheduled vacancy on the city council or on the board of education, the city charter requires that the vacancy be filled by appointment. So a candidate who's been appointed to elected office could use the term appointed incumbent or appointed board of education member if the candidate is for the same or a different office. Or they can use the 3 words describing their principal profession, vocation, or occupation, but they cannot use incumbent by itself or the title of the office without the word appointed. So they could use appointed incumbent. All right, so that's ballot designations. Next slide. Then we talk about candidate statements, and candidate statements are optional, but I find that most every candidate who runs for office, who at least has been successful, has put in a candidate statement. Most people put in their candidate statement. It does cost a little bit of money, but in terms of the bang for your buck, it gets to every one of your voters because it goes to the sample ballot pamphlet. So every voter in your district will get your candidate statement. So I think it's a good investment. It's a 200-word statement. It's about your education and your qualifications. You cannot refer to opponent's qualifications or lack thereof. You cannot be critical of your opponent. You can't refer to your opponent. You can only say, I'm the best candidate because and you give your reasons why you're the best candidate. It's nonpartisan. So this is that one area you cannot make references to membership or activity in partisan political organizations. So you can't say that I'm a candidate endorsed by the Democratic Party or whomever. That's not allowed in the candidate statement and would get struck out by either the elections official or, if challenged, the courts would probably uphold that. Candidates pay for the printing of this optional statement, and it's based on the number of voters that are in a district. So the mayor race, it was $1,900 prior. They're going to increase it because there's more registered voters leading up to the general election. So the deposit amount is $2,100 this time around. The 2 candidates will have the option to put in their candidate statement for $2,100. For city council districts, they're smaller than Board of Education districts. Thus, the city council is 400 and Board of Education is 500. So they cover smaller number of voters in each of those, for each of those seats. All right, next slide. So some of the things that you'll also turn in is your statement of economic interest, and this is the one thing where I usually get a candidate who really who is new to the process says, "What? You want me to tell you all about my financial background?" Well, you're running for public office, and it's required. It's your financial interest disclosure form about your investments, your real property, your business positions, your spouse's business positions. So anything that you might have influence, they want you to publicly disclose it so people know who you are as a candidate and how your financial stake might be involved with your election. It's just a disclosure document that's required of anyone running for public office. So it's all candidates, mayor, city council, board of education are required to file, and it's a retrospective reporting last 12 months. There are also rules about the gifts, honoraria, and travel that you may receive. Candidates may not accept gifts from any single source totaling more than $500 in a calendar year. So, and there are some exceptions, and there's a pamphlet that we give you. So if your spouse gives you a present, you don't have, it's $500 or more, you don't have to return it. You can accept that. But your campaign contributions are also not subject to the gift limit. They are required to be reported as part of the campaign regulations. Next slide. So talking a little bit about this, I could spend an hour talking about this part of it, the campaign finance forms. This is by far the most important and most technical of running for office, because you have to be exact. You have to make sure you follow the rules. The pamphlet that we give you is if not an inch thick, then maybe just shy of an inch thick. We double-side it. Campaign finance disclosure statements, they're basically, the Political Reform Act requires that the identity of campaign contributors, the amounts they give, and how you as the candidate spend the funds need to be disclosed to the public. And failure to file campaign statements can result in criminal, civil, or administrative penalties. And there are many examples out there where people that do not strictly adhere to running for office and filing these forms in a timely manner and accurately, they find themselves on the wrong end of the Fair Political Practices Commission. Late fines accrue at $10 per day. There are no extensions for filing deadlines. There are no contribution or expenditure limits for races in Pasadena. There are a few, there is one law that restricts some campaign contributions, but I will go over that with those that are running for city council or mayor, specifically with them, because it's a lot of time. It takes a little bit of time. And these limitations are placed on the campaign contributions received for council races based on the Taxpayer Protection Act. But I won't go into it because it's a little bit too inside pool a little bit. That manual that I was talking to you about, it's available on the Fair Political Practices Commission website. It's Campaign Disclosure Manual 2. It's very heavy reading, but it's really important that you get through it. Chapter 1, Getting Started, will answer a lot of your questions as you seek to get your campaign off the ground, and what you need to do to make sure that you're starting off on the right foot in terms of campaign finance and disclosing out those contributions and expenditures you're making as a candidate. Next slide. Some of the initial forms that you need to file before you can receive or make any expenditures. You need to file your Form 501 candidate intention statement. This form is not required if you will not solicit or receive contributions from any persons, and the only expenditures will be made from your personal funds used for the filing fee and or the statement of qualifications, your candidate statement that's printed in the sample ballot. So if you're not going to do anything more than just pay the fee, the $25 filing fee and your deposit for your candidate statement, then you don't actually have to do the campaign forms. So that's one thing you should know. But most everybody who's running for office, as we've talked about here, as some of the candidates have said, the money is needed to run an effective campaign. Next slide. The other form that's really important to file at the beginning is the Form 410 Statement of Organization. Must be filed within 10 days of qualifying as a committee, and you do so by receiving contributions of $2,000 or more, or expending funds totaling $2,000 or more. And if you've done that, then you have 10 days to file. You don't have to wait to qualify. If you know you're going to do that, then you can file that ahead of time. You can file that with your, even before we issue you your nomination documents. But be sure to stay on top of that. Again, personal funds for the filing fee and the candidate statement do not count toward the $2,000 threshold. All committees that file I do want to say that there's an ongoing filing requirement that occurs throughout the campaign and then into the next calendar year a little bit, depending on how long you keep your committee open. But all committees that file a statement of organization must pay a $50 annual fee to the Secretary of State, and they will send you out a bill. They never forget. Next slide. So when you're returning items, when you're filing nomination papers with my office, you have the nomination paper with the minimum number of required signatures. I don't advise you to come in with less than 35 if you can. Some people will come in with 25. Some of them made it, some of them didn't. So make sure that you do come in with a good number of signatures. You have your filing fee, your candidate statement, your deposit, the statement of economic interest, your ballot designation worksheet, and then your Form 501 and your Form 410 if you want to bring that in with you. Next slide. And then the deadline to file is August 7th, but I always want people to come in early. So at least come in August 3rd or 4th and give us some time to check your signatures and make sure you don't have any signatures that didn't count and you have the minimum number. Jackie's saying collect double the amount. I agree with Jackie. And then August 12th at 5 p.m. for the races where the incumbent doesn't file. So that's the other deadline. Due to COVID, we're asking for appointments, so call our office or send me an email, say you want to come in to be issued nomination papers, file early, as I said, and then come prepared. We want to make sure that especially in COVID, we want to make sure you have all your paperwork done correctly. I'm going to talk with candidates about making sure that they contact me before they come in so that I can look over what they've got. Maybe we'll do some FaceTime and look at it and say, hey, want to make sure you're all set so that you can come in, file quickly and effectively, and then we don't have to spend too much FaceTime social distancing in the office. Next slide. And then the last thing, I want to talk a little bit about the election changes that are happening in 2020. First of all, we talked a little bit about the vote centers. Vote centers replace your local polling sites. So I'm sure all of you participated in the March election, so you got your first taste of the vote center model. It wasn't the greatest vote center model rollout that's ever happened. They had a lot of issues. They've been working hard to address those issues. We've met with them a couple of times. And one of the things that's really going to mitigate the vote centers is everybody's going to receive their vote by mail ballot anyway. So, but still, vote centers will be available, and they'll be available 11 days ahead of time. Then the order of precedence is reversed on the ballot order. Anthony Portantino put in a bill that was adopted as a trial run for LA County, where they have put the local races at the top of the ballot, giving more sunshine to local races and that have a harder time of getting the attention of voters, and put the federal and state races towards the end of the ballot. So this gives a little bit more assistance to local candidates to make sure that the campaigns or the races get a good turnout in responses by voters, that they don't lose out on voters because of voter fatigue. And then vote by mail ballot changes. It's a full face ballot. All the candidates' names, all the ballot questions appear on the ballot. Return postage is paid. Everyone's going to get it. It's not in here, but I should have put it in here. Everyone's going to get a vote by mail ballot. And there's going to be vote by mail ballot drop-off sites in the city. And I think with that, I have completed my presentation. I didn't time myself, but I don't know how I did. But that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks so much, Mark. Michelle, I don't know if you want to deal with this. I did see one question typed in that is a little bit off topic from running, but may become relevant depending on who runs the mayor race. How do you go about getting appointed to a city council seat?
Well, I've been through it. When Chris Holden won his seat at the state level, his office became vacant. I've been through it twice now, actually. The city charter says that the city council shall fill the vacancy within 75 days. It's the person, we created a little bit of a process for the person to get appointed. They had to do sort of a nomination process. They had to go out and get 25 signatures to say that there are 25 neighbors that vouch for that person. And then we held interviews at the council in a public setting, and then the city council voted. Initially with Mr. Holden's office, the council tried to, because the election was just a few months later, the council tried to not allow anybody who was going to get appointed to run for office. Not really technically constitutional, but that's what they said. The other, for the other office, which was when Terry Tornick won for mayor, his term was still 2 years before it was up for re-election. So the council appointed Andy Wilson to the vacancy, and then Andy ran for he ran for election as an appointed incumbent.
So you basically, if you're interested, pull papers just as you would and file.
Yeah, we will put out information if that happens, and it'll be right away. We have 75 days to do it. So I imagine, the next council meeting after we swear in the council, that'll be one of the first items on the agenda. We have a vacancy in the district, and we'll put out an application process, issue papers, get the signatures, verify everything, and then the council actually last time appointed committee members to handle it, and they came up with sort of the rules and regulations, and since it has to be done in a public setting, which it was, we put in some measures to make sure it was as fair as possible.
Jackie, you had a question?
Yes, since the LA County Registrar is running the elections now, to your knowledge at this point, do you know if any of the existing vote centers that were used in March will be the same ones for November? And if not, what is the deadline by when they have to confirm the sites, particularly in Pasadena?
If there was only a deadline, if there was only a deadline, I'd be happy. I know that they are looking. They came back to the city and they want Villa Park to be a vote center site. They want Robinson Park to be a vote center site. They want Victory Park to be a vote center site, and they want Rosemont Pavilion to be a vote center site. I'm pushing to get more because 4 is not enough, but I know that they are going to eliminate a lot of the smaller vote center sites because they felt like they were stretched too thin, that people didn't really know the difference between a small vote center site and a large vote center site. But in the end, I think that they're going to get a lot of pushback if there's not enough vote center sites. So I will continue to advocate with the county. When we first started on, with them going back and forth on the vote centers, I think we were at 15. And then I pushed kind of hard and we ended up with 24 in the city. Unfortunately, the 24, there was problems at like 17 of them. Some of them opened late. Some of them, when they were supposed to open, the equipment was still in boxes. I mean, I was just beside myself, trying to work with them to get everything up and running. They had connectivity issues. They had poll worker issues on using the equipment. They had a lot of things, and they got I think appropriately admonished pretty strongly by the Board of Supervisors to do better. And I know that Dean is hyper focused on getting it done better than he did for March. It wasn't its first rollout. I'm one of those that say let's give them a chance again. Some of it is voter education. People need to know to vote early because it's really important not to wait to the last minute, because the crush is literally not the same as it was before when we had neighborhood voting sites, because you know, everybody can't just crush on the last hour to come vote. So voting early is really important. I know that I voted here at City Hall, even though I live in San Fernando Valley. I was able to vote here at City Hall using the system. Nobody was in there with me. I voted on the Monday before. Nobody was in there with me. I voted, no line, no nothing. I cast my ballot and it was not a problem at all. Worked really well. But the next day we had line at City Hall for 4 hours until they were able to get all the voters in after the polls closed.
So before we move on, we have 2 callers that are on the phone that weren't able to type questions in the chat. And I wanted to give them an opportunity, if they had any questions or comments, to go ahead and ask. Let me see.
You may need to
I might have
unmute
to
them.
unmute them. Okay. Okay, I've just unmuted the callers on the phone. Do either of you have any questions or any concerns?
I'm muted still.
No, you're good now. We can hear you.
I unmuted you.
This is Jennifer.
Hi, Jennifer.
Oh, hey, I don't have any question. I've just been listening and taking notes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, though, for unmuting me.
And thank you. Okay, and then the other caller, oh, Allison. Hi, Allison. She says that she has no questions. She's just taking it all in. So thank you, Allison, for being here. Okay.
Shar, did you have another question?
Unmute, Shar.
Yes, this is for Mark. Mark, can you just, not on this call, but if you could send us just a link or to the area on the city website where we can locate the process of when a candidate's seat is vacant early and what that appointment process is like.
Yes,
I know you.
I could cover it. I could cover it fairly quickly. If, let's say, in this runoff election for mayor, Victor Gordo wins, okay? He is the council member for District 5. He would then take the office for mayor, and his seat would be vacant. And then the process would be put out by the council to sort of, that we would put out information about that shortly thereafter.
That's the process I'm speaking of. I understand the process of the vacancy, but what happens to get somebody appointed and then into that seat, and who decides that?
It's going to be the city council, because the charter gives them the authority to appoint. It'll be an application. If it goes by exactly what it was, it'll be an application process where the candidate, the prospective appointees would have to, quote, qualify by getting the 25 signatures. Then they would put in information about themselves in a biographical portfolio or whatever. And then the council would review everything, and they would then interview them in a live council meeting and then hold a vote.
And there's no limit for the amount of people that would be nominated for appointment.
There's no limit for the number of people that will apply. There will be one selected. The council may somehow determine a way, if they get 20 applicants, maybe they go through an interview process for all 20 applicants, or maybe they, cull the list somehow. I'm speculating, because we didn't have that issue last time. We had, I think, maybe five or six, maybe 7 applicants for the District 7 vacancy, and then we only had 3 or 4 for the District 3 vacancy.
Thank you, Mark.
Michelle.
Okay, so thank you so much. Great job, Susan. I think we're at the end, and so I'm going to turn it over to our illustrious chair, Jackie, for final comments and any announcements or and then you can adjourn us. Thank you.
Okay. So once again, thank you to all of you for participating in today's training. It is the first event of our training, education and training committee. So kudos to Michelle and Susan and our guest speakers tonight as well. I want to invite you, if you are not already a member of our chapter, to please join us by becoming a member. We are on Facebook now, and you can find our page at facebook.com/NWPC GPA. I would also like to share with you another upcoming event that we have, which is a mock election for the vice president position that we all know a female is strongly being considered by the Biden campaign. And so we are holding a online mock election. It will be held on Tuesday, July 21st, and we encourage everyone to please go online and vote for that prior, and then we'll have a discussion about it. It's open to anyone. You don't have to be a member of the club to participate, and all of that information is on our Facebook page as well. And our meetings are held on the 4th Tuesday of every month, of course, via Zoom to practice social distancing. And so we hope to see you later on this month in our meeting. If you have any questions, please feel free to email Michelle, whose email address is on the confirmation that you received for today's event. Thank you to Mark Jomsky again for sharing your evening with us this evening and all of the important information that you shared with us. We know you have a tough job as city clerk, especially right now, especially as you're transitioning a lot of the duties that you were formerly responsible for to the Los Angeles County Registrar. And so we wish you well during this
Thank
time.
you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I really had a great time. I appreciate all the information, and I got to learn another side of the campaign perspective. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you, thank you. And so I will adjourn, and thank you everyone for joining us again.
Thank you all. Great
Thank you.
job, everybody. Thank you.